am no mathematician, but this just does not add up. We know that the federal government, the state governments, are doing everything possible to create enough housing, social housing, rental opportunities, because there is an absolute crisis in housing and rental accommodation in this country right now. WA is struggling, absolutely struggling to keep up with the demand. So then you say to yourself, well, then why would the federal government not have done something drastic in terms of the numbers of people that are coming into the country as the migration levels seem to be, not going back, as Anthony Albanese said last year, but going up? Try and make some sense of it all. Leith Van Onselen is the co-founder of Macro Business and a chief economist at MB Fund and MB Super, and joins me on the line. G'day, Leith.
G'day, Gary. Thanks for having me on.
All right, let's just look at these numbers for January. Over 100,000. I think even at a sort of a net level, it's 55,330 people in 1 month. Where the hell are they all living, mate?
Yeah, mate. Look, the numbers that came out were quite extraordinary. So, as your listeners probably know, last financial year was a record for the official net overseas migration. So these are the sort of unofficial numbers. And what that showed is that in 2022-2023, the nation added 518,000 net overseas migrants, and that lifted the population by 624,000. Now, we were told by the Albanese government that they were going to try and cut the numbers. But unfortunately, the second half of the year and into January, the numbers have just kept rising based on all the other data. So last week, we got the national accounts for the fourth quarter from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And what that suggested was Australia's population grew by 680,000 last calendar year, so in the year to December, which is, 1.5 Canberras basically. And then this data that was released yesterday suggested that it increased even further in January. So the population keeps going up, and this is obviously driven by immigration. And the sad thing is Western Australia is actually copping it the hardest, would you believe? So you're not getting the highest numbers in terms of migration, but as a percentage of your population, Western Australia is getting the largest net overseas migration. So your population growth was 3.1% last financial year, which is the most recent data, and you got immigration of 2.1% of your population in a single year, which is just extraordinary numbers here. And this is why, obviously, Western Australia and also the rest of the country is experiencing extreme rental crisis. And if you don't mind, I'll just put some quick numbers around that, if you don't mind, just to sort of tell the readers what they're getting here. So according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, WA added only 13,200 homes last financial year. So that's once you account for demolitions. That's the number of homes that was increased.
Yep.
That's against a population increase of 87,000, 61,500 of which was from the overseas migration.
Wow.
So what that means is that WA only built one home per 6.6 new residents last financial year. Now, that is the reason why Western Australia has the lowest rental vacancy rate in the nation. So data released today by PropTrack showed that Perth's rental vacancy rate was just 0.75% in February versus 1% across the combined capitals, which is also a record low. And that is why, Western Australians are struggling to find rental housing, why people being forced to live in group housing, why some are becoming homeless, and why rental inflation is running through the roof. It's because basically the number of renters that the nation and Western Australia are importing through immigration is far more than homes can be built. And I think the question that all Western Australians and Australians more generally need to ask the Albanese government is, why are you importing record numbers of people without a plan to house them and without a plan to provide infrastructure for them? Because the way this is turning out is the federal government has created the worst rental crisis in generations through its reckless immigration.
And also, you saying it that way, it reminds me of conversations that you have with people who are in their 20s saying, how on earth am I ever going to either find somewhere to rent or buy a house? Because there is no end in sight to the sort of pressures on the market. I can't see an end in sight to the sort of the cycle that we're in at the moment.
No, and unfortunately, if you're a young person and you want to try and save for a house, obviously you're paying more in rental costs. So that's obviously destroying your ability to save.
Yep.
And then obviously the property prices are surging as well because there's so much excess demand over supply. So the target just keeps moving away from you. can't save money quick enough for a home deposit
So
to catch up with home prices.
So then I say to you, yeah, but, we need the workforce, we need the skilled labour because COVID slowed us down, and we need to get back to some sort of footing there where people can go out and employ people to do the jobs that we need to keep the economy going.
Yeah, look, it's a bit of a false argument. I'll tell you why it's a false argument. So Australia's population has grown by 8.1 million people this century, right? So in the last 24 years. Now, that is unbelievable amount of population growth. And the reason why we embarked on this whole high immigration program, which started in the mid-2000s, was because the business lobby told the federal government that Australia faces terrible skills shortages, and unless we import a whole bunch of people to solve them, they're going to get worse. Well, guess what? We've grown the population by 8.1 million people primarily through immigration, and we've got worse skills shortages than ever.
Yep.
And all it tells you is it doesn't work. And the reason why it doesn't work is, so for example, we've got a building crisis at the moment, right?
Yep.
We don't have enough builders. So what if we imported, say, 200,000 builders to build homes? You might solve the building problem, but then you create shortages in nursing, in teaching, because those builders will need to send their kids to school, they'll need hospital care, they'll need all the other things that we need. So then we'll have shortages there. So then the government will go, okay, we need to import more nurses. So they import more nurses, they import more teachers, they import all these other people. And then you end up with a shortage of builders again. So the whole thing is tail wagging the dog economics, or like a dog chasing its tail. And we've basically done that. We've grown the population by 8.1 million people this century, and skills shortages are worse than ever. So all it tells you is it's not the solution.
All right.
In fact, you can't solve a housing crisis by constantly increasing demand for housing.
Okay. The other notion, of course, is that those migration numbers are what's keeping us away from going into recession. According to latest GDP figures, we sort of came close.
It's true.
Right.
It is, but who cares? So the whole thing is, the reason why I say who cares is that whether the overall economic pie is growing or not isn't the thing that matters. It's everyone's share of the pie. So yes, the economy grew last year modestly, but per person, your slice of the pie shrunk by 1% last year because the economy didn't grow fast enough to keep up with the population growth. So it's still a recession. It's just a per capita recession. And the worst thing about it is the only segment of the economy we should really care about as you and I is the household sector, because we're households. The household sector actually went backwards by 2.5% per capita last year. So, yes, we had a bit of boost from exports and other stuff, but us as households went backwards even further than the overall economy went backwards once you adjust for population growth. So the whole notion that we need immigration to keep us out of recession is a bit of a false argument, because, yes, it grows the economic pie, but it doesn't grow the slice per person, and the slice per person is actually shrinking. So it's a little bit of, statistical trickery.
Yeah, okay. If you look at just the last question though, but in terms of these figures being quite startling in terms of migration figures in the first month of the year, what about forecasts, given what Anthony Albanese said in December about curtailing the numbers? And
so basically what they projected this financial year, so we're talking about the up to 30 June, was 375,000 net overseas migration. Now that's obviously down from peak, but that would still be the second highest migration in the nation's history. It's still way above historical norms. And based on this data, we're going to be running way ahead of that. So, if you look at the national accounts, you look at this data, we probably, I'm guessing, because we don't know officially, but probably did about 550,000 net overseas migration last calendar year. It's up to 31st of December. And so to get it down to 375,000 in 6 months, when the first month of January is higher again, seems very unlikely. So we're going to have another, period of immigration shooting the lights out and probably beating their forecast.